How do you make sure that the agent, even if you want to give it access, you restrain and constrain what access that you want to give it to with extremely fine-grained limits, not just based on the actions, but also context, right? Maybe the agent can only run from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And it can't do whatever it wants to do unless Adam approves, yeah, you can do it.
I think the biggest shift that's happening is an industry shift of speed. Every company of every size is feeling it. Every board is putting pressure. Every CEO is feeling the need. Every employee is trying to figure out how to go faster. Just have to move fast to compete. And so if companies have processes that are slow or things don't get approved because somebody was on vacation and there was no escalation mechanism, they get hung up and your customers aren't happy, your employees aren't happy, and your business moves slowly.
Hey, welcome to the Scalekit Podcast. I'm Ravi, CTO and co-founder of Scalekit. Scalekit is an auth stack for AI applications. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Adam, CTO at Workato, an enterprise automation and integration platform that orchestrates workflows across thousands of applications. Before joining Workato, Adam spent over a decade in platform engineering leadership roles at AWS, Google, Salesforce, and Mozilla, focusing on developer platforms and API infrastructure. Adam, we are so excited to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ravi.
Adam, before we jump into all sorts of workflow automations, Workato has been in the integration space for so many years, predominantly built for developers implementing workflows and automations. But now, in the last few years or so, we are hearing LLMs and AI agents and doing all sorts of things. So, how do you think the whole business workflow implementation and automation is changing with the advent of these AI agents?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look, Workato was started over a decade ago around the idea that business processes are the life of your company. And business processes don't live in any one application. They tend to live across applications and require multiple people. If you think about how your company takes an order and then goes through all the step and gets cash at the end, that's different departments, different people, different applications, external parties like your bank are involved. And in fact, most important processes in a company cut across the entire company. So Workato was founded on the idea that technology could make those processes run way better, but be really simple to use. And the state of the art back in the day was incredibly complex, developer focused, kind of exotic, batch oriented, data integration and transformation platforms on premise. I mean, the list goes on. And Workato was founded cloud native, was founded easy to use, and has just continued to push forward for customers and just offer great integration platform experience for customers of every size.
Great. So, from your perspective as a CTO, what do you think is the biggest technical shift that is happening in the business process automation space that Workato is in?
I think the biggest shift that's happening is an industry shift of speed. Every company of every size is feeling it. Every board is putting pressure. Every CEO is feeling the need. Every employee is trying to figure out how to go faster. We just have to move fast to compete. And so if companies have processes that are slow or things don't get approved because somebody was on vacation and there was no escalation mechanism, they get hung up and your customers aren't happy, your employees aren't happy, and your business moves slowly. So I think the biggest macro change is an environmental one, like a broad industry-wide context thing, which is speed. Everyone has to go faster. And so that's driven a ton of demand for technologies like ChatGPT to help you do things fast and SaaS to help you run business processes, you run your different business functions fast, and integration technology so you can run your business processes fast.
So, one fundamental question that I had was, I know you spoke about speed and everything is going at an accelerated pace nowadays. But when you speak about these business processes, the predictability and deterministic way of running the same workflow every single time is extremely critical. But when these chat GPTs and LLMs come into picture, they become slightly probabilistic. So Where do these two come into picture? Like, do you sacrifice some sort of accuracy for speed? How does it work?
I think everybody has had that experience when they do some work in ChatGPT and it's like, good news, I completed what you told me to do. And then you look and it didn't. and like the blast radius of this gets really big when you put it in software and you try to do important company things with it. So hallucinations, skipping steps, black box behavior. These LLM technologies are extraordinarily powerful, but have this extraordinary weakness in the heart of them. And so this emerging pattern that we're seeing work really well is combining the deterministic and the non-deterministic. It's taking advantage of the cognition and the natural language processing and the even creativity and curiosity of frontier models, but combining it with predictable workflows. So don't invent how to process a health insurance claim, but absolutely use an LLM to understand the human's intent and understand the natural language, but then make sure you follow the prescribed, maybe even regulatory required steps, and make sure all the steps are done and no steps are skipped. And so this pattern seems to be a really important pattern emerging, which is combining predictable workflows with the creativity and the cognition of LLMs. And putting those together, I think, is kind of the grand challenge in software for the next 10 years.
You said it really, really well. How do you marry the good parts of LLMs and frontier models and with the predictable nature of the requirement of workflows to be executed in the same order, in the same fashion? I think that's going to be the key. So one of the things that I saw that you guys launched is around agentic workflow implementation or execution. Can you talk a little bit more about that particular solution?
Yeah, the Workato management team got together 2 years ago for an offsite and really tried to reflect on what was going on in the integration orchestration space with customers as Workato's business was just accelerating and sort of the legacy stuff was dropping away and the Workato generation of cloud native, easy to use stuff was just really gaining speed. And the rise of LLMs. This is 2 years ago. Everybody's like messing with ChatGPT, seeing it do really powerful things, but also, the shortcomings we talked about. So they got together and the management team drew a line in the sand. And they said over the next 2 years, they're going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is finish the integration stack. And they spent, this is amazing, $150 million in engineering over the last 2 years to add everything somebody might need for integration from Workato. RPA, ETL, analytics. They got a bunch of certifications, PCI and ISO certifications. They tried to just really get the integration stuff done because they saw, number two, how important predictable workflows integration were going to be to take advantage of LLMs. So they spent about 2 years, Workato spent 2 years working with 80 customers really deep on AI technologies. Companies like Samsara working with their IT support function to reinvent that with agentic technology. And so that brings us today where I think the company has learned a ton and is well positioned with new products that combined agentic technology with predictable process and workflow technology. I could talk a lot about the product. I think you probably want to talk more about the learnings, but we definitely had to go up the learning curve of putting together the predictable with the stochastic, the non-deterministic, so that you get the best out of both.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned, like you spoke about? Let's focus on that. What did you learn along the way from the initial versions of building this? And then what went wrong and what are the course corrections that you had to do to get it right eventually?
I actually joined Workato pretty recently, and I was at AWS last 3 years and change, running a number of service teams. And so I can speak a little bit of perspective of both and try to just add some industry perspective. I think it's really easy to get a compelling demo or proof of concept with AI, and it's really hard to make it real. And it requires a kind of intellectual rigor and honesty with yourself or with your company of what's good enough to go into prod. And if you cut corners and you don't measure and you don't have a quant point of view like robust evals, it's really easy to trick yourself in thinking you've got something that's rock solid, but then edge cases just start knocking it over in unpredictable ways. And so I think there's a kind of intellectual rigor and honesty needed to measure the quality of these systems as you build them or as you deploy them for customers. We're in the stage of software engineering before DevOps and robust tests and test first methodology and all that stuff. Like, so we're kind of in the YOLO era. You only live once. And we need to move to the like process oriented era with maturity.
I totally agree with you, Adam. Like the gulf of building a POC and actually taking it to enterprise grade production deployable agent is just too high. And if you don't have the right evals in place, and if you're not actually measuring the efficacy and accuracy and predictability of the agent execution, then it's very easy to go wrong in so many number of ways that you don't even know where to begin.
But I see this all the time, this discussion of evals. And I'm telling you, people that spend all day in AI kind of get it, but outside of that, it's really unfamiliar and foreign. And even to the business, like I got two stories for you. One is I saw a e-commerce retailer doing a customer support scenario, and we're working with them on agentic customer support. And the customer calls in and has some problem. But their mental models, there's 300 different intents that a customer might have when they call into customer support. They had 600 examples. Well, 600 examples is a really sparse set of tests for 300 intents. Just do the math, But in their mental model, they have a robust understanding of customer support. So there's a lot like up in here that's not in the data that they're able to work with yet or measure. There's a lot that's in the head that's not in the data that they can measure yet. And so there's a learning and evolution we all have to go through, and education we have to all go through to wrap our heads around this. Quantitative tooling will be needed, quantitative testing will be needed to ensure we're moving to high quality solutions.
You also spoke about it's not easily understood by developers outside who are building AI applications day in, day out about evals. Do you want to slightly go deeper into that specific thing? Why do you think developers are not able to get it, that is the most important and critical part of building AI applications?
What quality is acceptable for a self-driving car? I don't know. It better not crash ever. Like, it's got to be really, really good. Well, okay. I have teenagers. What quality is acceptable for them to be driving? I don't know. They're pretty inexperienced. They're probably not 100%, never crash, right? I got a few dents and scrapes on the cars. So, what we accept from humans and how we think about good is different when we look at a system than we look at a human. If you ask a customer support team what quality they expect from an AI tool, they'll say 99.9%. Okay, what do you get from your humans that you're paying, a modest wage? It's probably not that high. So it's fair to expect a really high quality. Like, I won't drive a self-driving car unless it's really, really, really good. There's all this like perception stuff and relative quality stuff that's important. But going back to your question, I think the heart of it is builders love to build, developers love to build, and we take a lot of joy in the creation side and seeing it work. And then everything else is something, have a big successful business. And the something, all that rigor and operational maturity and measurement. And, I saw a ton of this in Amazon, Workato also, but Amazon, Workato, really good at operating at scale. Those things are new. They're not generally taught in computer science departments. We would do a weekly ops meeting at Amazon that most engineers of the company joined in. And, we went over COEs, right? Correction of errors, like things that went bad. And Amazon talks about this publicly. A COE includes the 5 whys. Why did the system crash? Oh, the disk filled up. Why did the disk fill up? Well, the alert didn't fire. Why didn't the alert fire? And because the intern forgot to blah. Why did an intern own the alert? You keep going. Why? So it's a different discipline. The same kinds of learnings need to be applied to the AI world, and that rigor brought. It's the less fun part, but I think we have an obligation to take all this AI promise and make it real. And that's why Workato is pushing so hard on this deterministic workflow stuff. Our customers process health insurance claims on Workato. Our customers do customer support on Workato. They manage the life cycle of employees in Workato. The processes they build in Workato, 900,000 community recipes, do things predictably. So the opportunity is then bring that AI cognition and capability. It might be inside of a step. Oh, the person typed this, so let's make sense of it. Or it might be looking at the whole process or a set of processes and learning how to use them and put them together and configure new ways. An example of that is we had a customer, the orders were getting delayed out of the UK. Orders getting delayed because they were hung up in a warehouse. So any customer that call in would find out their order was delayed from the warehouse. I don't know, what could we do to fix it? One customer at a time. Well, the orders are delayed at the warehouse because the warehouse caught on fire. So if you do those one at a time, you miss out on the structural thing that like all of those processes are stuck. And so I think now the opportunity that we're working on is agents to look across all your processes and work like elite teammates to make your business run better.
Earlier, you spoke about organizations or companies have processes that span across different tools that they use. They can be SaaS tools, they can be internal tools, they can be databases, whatever they can be. And Workato is trying to make those processes real by building something called community skills or community recipes that you spoke about earlier. Now, when these skills or enterprise ready skills need to be created that needs to be run deterministically, how do you think about what should be the definition of the skill itself and how it needs to be built for AI agents to actually execute these skills? What is a mental model, or how does it change between building these skills for developers versus building these skills for AI agents?
Yeah, this is hot, right? Workflows and workflow tech for developers are really hot. And there's every flavor. There's programmatic Python and TypeScript. There's visual things that output programmatic TypeScript. There's purely visual, but you can run it in your own container. And then there's things like Workato that we just fully manage serverless, cloud-based with a visual front end. We've been really successful with the visual, easy to understand. We have the rigor of cloud scale. We allow customers to add custom Python code or Ruby code actually is the other one where they need to, for example, in a custom adapter or custom API adapter. But we really like that the business can understand what they're looking at. You can suffer a real disconnect where the developers are building something that's different than what the business wants, and the business doesn't feel like they can change it. An example of that is in marketing departments. Marketing departments almost never have good developer support. Like developers work on products, they work on core IT systems. They almost never really help marketing. Where they really don't help is finance. I've never met a developer that wants to work on FP&A and RevRec and invoice reconciliation. So these business departments are typically underserved by developers. So Workato enables IT people that may or may not have a development background and the business to really work on their processes themselves and put agents on top of it. So I think we have work to do to make our product even friendlier for developers. Like, we're the connect to everything people, so why wouldn't we? We have a little work to do there. But that core idea of helping companies build skills that drive core processes predictably, make that really easy for the business, and then add agents on top that take advantage of those to do like superhuman-like capabilities. That is our strategy, and we're really happy with the customer response so far.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. So now moving on from actually building the agents, and then you spoke about how do you offer these agents to your customers, whether they're developers or non-coders, for lack of a better word. So how does the whole experience of offering your platform to these newer personas actually change when you move from developer-focused workflow creation to non-developer focused workflow creations?
Well, we do both, right? So we're trying to attract a really broad set of skills. It's funny. Do you remember the early days of the LLM playground kind of things? And they would ask you like top K and temperature. Yeah. And, and we kind of don't pay much attention. Like we seem to put more energy in prompting and stuff. So, there is a wide range of ways you can approach LLM tools to build agents. And that's just fine. Our approach that we're finding work really well is to really look at the agent as an elite human teammate that's highly capable. And when you put an agent to work, do you really want it to do one task, or is what you really care about a business outcome? So our new way of building agents is to start with a business KPI, then create a job description. What is the role of this agent to do? Then get into like the ways it works, the tools it can use, like all those skills. A company that uses Workato, this is pretty exciting, has super connectivity to all of their different applications, data, and business processes. So all that is the potential of what's available to those agents. So there's a lot of signal coming in. There's a lot of cognition capability in the agent. we're finding this KPI driven, almost like it kind of works with like obsessive qualities of the LLM. And I feel like I am putting an agent to work that's shortening my vendor onboarding cycle time. Like that's a KPI. Or my outbound lead conversion rate. So, when you put an agent to work, you give it a job description, has these different tools. They can be very creative. They can use the predictable tools that they have, but also be very creative in trying new experiments, testing the results, and then coming to a human to see if you want to put that into production, advance that technique. I can give you a specific example, Ravi. So we're building an agent here to run our vendor management process. And one thing, if you've worked at a big company, it's kind of hard to onboard a new vendor. Like you need their legal payment their legal information, their right to work. Are they a company or an individual? You have to pay them, through this banking information, ACH. You have to get them like an IT account, like an email account and access to your systems, but the right access. You might have to get them a laptop. The CISO might have to review them. Legal has to do contracts with them. There's like 6 different things in 6 different systems, right? So our FP&A team, finance team, said what really determines, what really tells us if we're doing a great job is cycle time. Can we do this in less than 24 hours? So we built an agent to run that whole process with all those deterministic steps, but then figure out how to make the whole thing run better. And that agent for us, inside Workato, discovered that our problem was ingestion quality. So when somebody in the business said, hey, I need this vendor to do something for me, if we didn't capture the right information then of what do they need, what kind of company was it, what kind of IT access they're going to need, let us explain what the 4 different levels of IT access are. If we didn't get all that right at the beginning, it slowed us down later. A specific example, I had a UK recruiter helping me onboard a contractor. In the UK, a common thing is like employment with a term. So it's a regular employee, but has a defined termination date in 90 days. We sort of don't do it that way in the US. We bring in a contractor, we do a statement of work, but it was kind of lost in translation. So the agent could catch that stuff at the beginning and prevent that negative drag on cycle time. So that's an example of a real world agent inside Workato using our predictable tools, but then using its cognition to identify a new way to improve our process and drive that KPI better of cycle time.
Yeah, I think I also caught one thing in what you said, Adam. You said treat an agent like a superhuman or another super employee. So when you start doing that, these agents need access just like employees would need access to a lot of different tools that are being used in the application. So how does the identity of this agent and access of this agent, and what are the new kind of worms that open up when you start treating them like that?
And Ravi, I love that we're in this space. I know Scalekit is in this space. So I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you what we do, and I'll tell you how I personally think about it. So we have in the Workato platform a secure way of impersonating users. And when a process runs on behalf of a user or an agent, it has fine-grained role-based access control to what it can access. No service accounts. There's no client app that's to manage identities and permissions and stuff. And this is everything from like our search product, Workato Go, our API integration, all that stuff. It acts on behalf of users. So that saves us a lot of pain that I think probably others have seen, and Scalekit probably addresses for your customers. But if it's okay, can we go to sort of the more forward-looking part?
Yep.
Okay. It's a really prickly problem in my mind in the long run. I can imagine, like for me personally, I can imagine an agent that I trust to go to my bank to get my balance. So I know if I've got money in my debit card, but I don't want to give it full access to my account. So that system doesn't even offer the kind of scoping that I want, where I might trust an agent to do less. So I think we don't have everything we need in this new world yet. And what seems to me we're going to need, this might be a fun discussion, and I defer to you as our identity expert. I think we're going to have a more expressive way to talk about permissions that we're okay with. I don't give you full access to my bank. I will let you look up account balance, things like that, or verify a deposit was made or something, that my paycheck was deposited. And I need a finer grain controller for what an agent can do than what the bank offers with its identity and permission system. And I used to work at Salesforce, worked in the Salesforce platform. There's a lot of fine-grained control, field visibility. There's like a lot of stuff in there, but it's not set up for agents today. And the primitives may be there, but the expressive capabilities for a user to permit an agent to do some things and not others. Sort of the policy language isn't clear. And then if I may, there's a second thing. Let's pause there. And then I get a second thing I want to get your take on also.
So I totally agree with you, Adam. So you spoke about two problems. One is, let's say you built your own personal, let's say, finance assistant agent that you want to give access to your bank account to do certain things. Now, the agent obviously accesses your bank account on your behalf, but it shouldn't have everything or all the privileges that you have. Or even if you want to give it access, you would want to constrain some of the access that it may have. Like it can only access last 24 hours statement report and not 365-day statement report. Or it may be able to do smaller transactions, but not larger transactions. So how do you make sure that the agent, even if you want to give it access, you restrain and constrain what access that you want to give it to with extremely fine-grained limits, not just based on the actions, but also context, right? Maybe the agent can only run from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And it can't do whatever it wants to do unless Adam approves. Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's a bunch of flags on yes, no. It feels like a more robust policy. You can move money, but only up to $12. That is my limit. I don't trust agents to do anything more than that. You absolutely can give my kid $10 for allowance. You absolutely cannot, move $200 to some no-name account, right?
You're absolutely spot on in saying that while agents are acting on your behalf to access the applications that you can access, but the most important part is what can they do with the access that they have, and how do you restrain them to do only the things that you want them to do.
And I don't know, there's probably work in policy languages and stuff that I'm not caught up in, and how to make those human understandable or human, but it's really nuanced. It's actually why I think the an analog of the problem is why the worst agent demo I always see is booking travel. Like, I'm super picky on what time my flight leaves, what airline, what seat I get. If I had a terrible seat, like 45 franc
F.
or 45G, would I take a different flight an hour later for $25 more? Yeah, I probably would, right? I want to be in 7D. I don't want to, or 7 Charlie. I don't want to be in 47 Groucho. So that's why those demos are always terrible. Like, it's so funny that they come up over and over again, from Google and others. Like, good news, Google's agent thing can book flights for you or whatever. Because it just seems like the wrong thinking about the use case. And then if you ask me, hey, Adam, what is your personal policy for what are those trade-offs? How do you express those trade-offs? I'm not even sure I could write it down right now. I could kind of tell you, but I'm not sure I even have the self-awareness to know exactly which seats and time of day and like which is worse, a 2-hour later or a 12-row seat change. I don't have a semantic argument for that. Like a lambda calculus for like which is better. I don't know how to express that.
Unfortunately, we are not agents ourselves to have every little preference written down somewhere.
And also, like, there's this other thing where, like, the stakes go up. It's like the self-driving car problem. If I book it and my seat's crappy, I booked it, I must have made a good decision. If the agent books it and my seat's crappy, I'm pissed because the agent must have screwed up. It must have had a better option, and I'm not confident that it did the best job. So I think that's going to happen a lot, and that's another reason why we need a mix of deterministic things and non-deterministic things, just as a foundational approach, is our trust level with agents is never going to be perfect. And so I think customers, businesses, and even people are going to want to know their structured processes for some things. I always want to get a alert before I approve the Venmo transfer to somebody. I don't ever want an agent to do that automatically. I just want to be in control of that. Hey, you mentioned another thing that I think is worth talking about, which is context. So this is a second area that I'm really interested in, where I think there's implicit scoping to permissions that depends on what the process context is. If you're onboarding a new vendor and you get access to the banking account, you should be able to do things like provision the account as a payee, maybe move them some money, but you shouldn't be able to like suck in data on other payees or add other payees that are unrelated to the vendor you're onboarding. So there's this whole space of implicit permissions to agents within the context of a process. We're working on this area. We don't have it all in our product yet, but again, it's the structured process, the business outcome you're trying to get to, providing additional permission guardrails around what the agent can do, enforced on the agent, where even if the RBAC policy lets it do something, it's constrained and prevented from doing it because it doesn't make sense in the process context.
Yeah, I think you spoke about great point, which is guardrails. Earlier, you spoke about evals, how it is often overlooked in the journey of building the POC and taking it to production. Let's talk about guardrails also a little, Adam. I think this is also one of the most overlooked aspect while building agents and then taking them to actual production quality. Can you talk a little bit about from your own experience, how you see guardrails need to be set up appropriately and how do you test for these guardrails?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's easy to test. You put in like offensive words or competitors' products, and you almost always can. Will you sell me the truck for $12 if I'm really, really nice? And so it's really interesting. I actually think this is a gap, and the community has done a little bit of a disservice to yourself. If you read almost any like YouTube, watch any YouTube video on building a cool system with N8N or put your own LangChain thing together. It's like the early days of cloud or code where there was no security, no event handling, no prompt injection, like totally unsafe code. So we're in the prompt injection, ActiveX objects, insecure ActiveX objects, anything goes JavaScript era of agents right now. And I think there's an opportunity for the community to do a better job of the equivalent of prompt injection. It's prompt injection all over again. But adding guardrails, adding query transformations, adding out-of-domain filters, like every user input and every feedback from any other system or any output from any LLM needs to go through a transformation pipeline. And it's kind of boring to look at those over and over again, and they add latency and they get in the way of the cool little demo of like, you can automatically respond to YouTube comments with your drag and drop thing. But like, I'm just telling you now, you're going to learn the hard way. I think these projects will learn the hard way. There's more steps to go complete there. And I think we owe it to people to explain to them what actually is done behind the scenes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And my third favorite topic in that particular context of taking agents from POC to production is not a lot of observability, auditing, monitoring, and tracing built into the overall agent execution workflow so that you can look back and then see if something has gone wrong or if something has gone right or something needs to be changed. I want to understand more about how you are thinking about making these as part of Workato workflow execution processes, because you execute a lot of workflows for your enterprise customers. I'm sure audit log must be a most important aspect of the workflow execution.
This is interesting. Observability means different things in this new LLM world, and I think there's some definitional parity needed. Workato, the process thing that we've been doing for a decade, it's really good for observability. You can understand your flows and failure rates and auth problems and execution time. And, there's all this world of stuff running integration at scale. Our recipes can do like update a record in Salesforce or pull data from G Drive or can process a terabyte of information. Like our engine works that way. So it's really easy to understand what's happening. External dependencies like APIs can fail or time out or respond with small batch sizes or things that throw you. So we have all that in the platform. But now we're building agents throughout the Workato platform. So our customers are building these super intelligent agents to use these different tools and drive business KPIs. And so what is observability for those things? Well, the observability needs might be different. They might be how many tokens went in and out? What was the cost of this query? You may need to inspect responses because it might be running and it might be technically completing, but the quality might not be what you want. So I think there's a new world of stuff to do. We have an entirely new agentic version of our platform, Workato One, coming in, I don't know exactly when we'll ship this, but coming August 18th to 20th. And we'll add an entirely new agent studio with a ton of observability features. So I hope we got it right, but I definitely have the sense that there's a lot of different needs of observability in this new world that we're all learning together.
I would love to see what you're going to ship with that agentic capability that you're shipping. I want to understand one thing, like if a developer today is building agentic applications to solve some of the business processes or automate some of the business processes, what is your strongest advice to them as they go about building them from scratch? What are the things that you think they should keep in mind before something blows up in production?
My grand advice to developers is the same advice has been for 25 plus years I've been doing this, which is try to understand the business context as much as possible. If you take requirements and you only sort of understand them, or you think you understand them, you only sort of get the right answer. So be super curious, try to understand as much of the business, spend a day in the life, walk the shoes of the user, watch the actual videos. Don't rely on ChatGPT summaries of user feedback. Trust me, do not rely on anyone's summaries. Read it verbatim, and learn how to make your product the best it can possibly be. I'd start with that. And then the second thing is on the technical side, I try to build a really good conceptual model of how the AI is going to work in my product. The actual tools you use, like what framework you use to piece together the flow, is not super important. But getting the right signal in, the right context in for the AI to do the right cognition, the right prompt, and that doesn't mean the longest prompt or the most few shot examples in the prompt. It means the right prompt, an optimized prompt that doesn't burn too much IQ because it's too big or confusing. And it also fits the way that particular model works is important. So again, it's a lot of nuance there. And then, and this is super important, agents need agency. To build a great agent needs to be able to do things. So you have to give your agents the ability to do things predictably. And I see way too many projects that are like, and next we'll process the insurance claim, and then blah, 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 we'll figure that out later. Like, no, that matters now. So figure out how to get those core systems you use in your company, those APIs you use, those deterministic processes, get those connected to your agents so your agents can have agency. That's my top takeaway. And you could do that in any framework. There are different tools. We think Workato is a great tool for our customers to do it. But there are plenty of people that are get hung up on picking a framework and putting it together and kind of don't step back and look at the whole thing end to end. And I think you'll get better end results for your users if you look at it holistically.
I think that's a great advice, Adam. I think similar to what you just suggested, I think one of the first things that I learned when I was a developer a couple of decades back, it's not about writing code, it's about solving a problem. So you need to understand what the problem is and the entire context of the problem itself. So I think that's a great advice for people to understand what is a business problem that they're trying to solve and then use technology to solve the problem rather than trying to use the latest technology or the latest large language model.
And I'll tell you, nothing feels better than happy users. Doing cool tech is cool, but my personal thing is it feels way better to have happy users than just to solve a hard technical problem.
Totally agreed, Adam. On closing, what do you think in the next 2-3 years or so, what are you most excited about the agent-driven automation in the whole workflow automation era?
Well, I'd back up. The whole industry is running to one place, and that is super intelligent agents that can do amazing things for business. We've seen the coding category agents take off. We see a lot of companies that have revenue has really spiked fast because when the agents really work, you're willing to spend, $100, $200 a day to do really useful work. And we're about to go see that across business processes, I think, in companies of every size. So there's a race to that space. And I think we're really well positioned as Workato to be a great option in that space. The SaaS vendors, like you're a CRM company or an IT service company, you're really good in that domain, but you don't run a company's whole business. You don't run treasury operations. You don't run employee onboarding. Those things live in different parts of the business. The ChatGPTs and the models of the world, they're getting better and better, and they're doing RL and getting more agentic capabilities in, but you kind of can never trust them to black box and connect directly to your organization's nervous system. Just too risky, too black box, too unknown. You want the cognition, so you're going to end up using their models, but I don't think you're going to end up using their entire stack to direct connectly to your treasury operations, your vendor payments, your employee lifecycle stuff. Just not unlikely. So we're the process people, and I think that what separates a great company from a not so great company is how well it runs its processes. Like a great process around customer success keeps your customers loyal. A great process around building and shipping products builds great products. And sometimes you're in many ways your ability to run your processes really well determines the winners from the losers. We think that's the right place to put agentic AI, this super intelligence. We're shipping a whole bunch at our user conference in middle of August in Las Vegas. It's a super exciting time, and I think agents on Workato will have that super connectivity and the ability to take agency, actually operate those structured processes and get stuff done, not just come up with a good idea or prepare a little like sales prep doc for you, but actually drive a process to closure in a predictable way. We think that's a really good fit. So that's what's coming from us. I think it's going to be a pretty wild ride for the next couple of years, but everyone's new teammates is going to be agents, and let's hope we can trust them and we get all the best of their curiosity and capability, and they deliver predictable, structured work when we need it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I'm looking forward to having a lot of AI teammates along with me getting my work done. Of course,
Sounds great.
with a little bit of oversight from my side. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you so much for your insights. And I'm sure this is extremely helpful for the people who are tuning in. And yeah, thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thanks for having me, Ravi. Cheers.